Hello, Jenny. Welcome to the Mentally a Badass podcast. I'm so happy to have you today.
Well, thank you so much, Justine. I'm really happy to be here.
We're going to have such a fun conversation today. And you know why? Because self care is a very hot topic in the mental health world. And we don't like to say it's selfish because it's not. And I feel like there's, especially women, have a very hard time doing self-care because like as like mothers or just caretakers, or we're gonna go definitely go into that. But I also like that we're gonna talk about not just like typical self-care like bubble baths and such, but the type of self-care where it's a little bit more in detail. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and the listeners will get to know it as we go on. I just can't really explain it right now. But before we get into that, we want to get to know you first.
I did work as a case manager where I had, like my own patients that I saw routinely, and I worked, throughout the week, and then I did some stuff in education and quality. But now I work for a different hospice company, and I just do on-call visits. So I work
Okay.
overnight. So usually, if somebody's had, like a fall, or if somebody's passed or is having some pain issues, things like that, then I'll go out and see them. But that's all I do now. I don't have my own patients that I see.
Gotcha. So it kind of went from like a full time to like kind of like a part, flexible,
Yes,
kind of.
yes.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, that totally makes sense. So what made you want to go into that career?
Well, I've been a nurse for 30 years, and my first several years were in like long-term care. I worked in nursing homes, and I did some work in a clinic, and then I took some time off to be home with my kids. And I had a close friend whose dad had been diagnosed with cancer, and ended up having a pretty big change and went to the ER, and then they sent him home on hospice services and gave him 2 weeks to live. And they weren't a very medical kind of family.
Hmm.
And so I kind of stayed with them for most of that time. And that was really my first introduction to hospice. Like I knew the word, but I didn't really know what it meant and what that looked like.
Hmm.
And it was such a cool experience. It was so great to be able to see him be at home and be able to be surrounded by his family. So there weren't like all of these visiting hours and things like that. He was able to be there with them, and he was a smoker, so he was able to go outside and smoke his cigarettes and really be surrounded by those people that he loved and in a place that was home to him, and become comfortable that way, with support from hospice. And I thought, that is such a cool thing. I think maybe I want to do that. And I
Yeah,
waited a little bit because, I kind of want to do everything. Every time I see something, I'm like, oh, I want to do that.
same. I'm the same way. This is why I'm stressed out all the time,
Yes,
fighting with our
yes.
brains.
Yeah, I get it. So I waited just a bit, and it was a month or two later that I applied at the hospice where he had services from, and I started there shortly thereafter. And so it's been 19 years now that I've done hospice.
Nice, nice. Yeah, that's a long time. I have another question, just meant to emotional wise.
Yes.
Working in that setting, at least for me, I'm a very emotional person. I don't know if you can tell. Yeah. So it can definitely be overwhelming and such emotionally. So how was that for you? Like, how did you? Because everyone's different, when it comes
Right.
to emotion. So how was that part of being, working in that industry and such?
Very emotional. There
Really?
it was up and down because, there were some patients and families that really just touched me, and I bonded with them quickly right from the beginning.
Hmm.
And there were other, cases maybe that were seemed like they would be more emotionally difficult on paper, but they just weren't. There wasn't a ton of rhyme or reason to it. But I had pediatric hospice patients as well. And
Hmm.
so my best friend and I, at the time, we were partners there at the hospice. And so we started seeing the pediatric patients because there were kids that were dying and they needed care, and most hospices wouldn't see them because it is different. And we didn't really feel comfortable with it, or like we were necessarily prepared to do it either. But it came down to, well, we have kids and we know what we would want somebody to be like if we, if we were in that situation. And so we just tried to, to care for the patients and the families like we would have if it would have been our own kids. And so those were definitely more challenging, especially the ones
Yeah.
that were around our kids' age at the time.
Mm.
Then it was definitely very easy to identify with those patients and moms especially.
Yeah, I feel like when it's like around, like, as you were saying, the kid's age or just like around your age, like for
Mhm.
me, I actually had a friend in college that died from breast cancer, and she's my age. We're in the same year and such, and it's so heartbreaking just because it hits the reality of being mortal.
Absolutely.
So when, because didn't, we're friends in college. We weren't like BFFs or anything like
Mhm.
that. Like we'll go out here and there. And she's like the sweetest person ever. And she was going to work in the medical field as well. And then she got hit with it's so sad, but it definitely feels kind of like, I don't know, like eye opening. Just definitely it hits you more
Mhm.
when it's like around the age. And I think that's a lot of people don't talk about that and how challenging that can be.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was one of the things I always told myself, if I ever get to the point where it doesn't affect me anymore, then I know I need to be gone.
Really?
Because I didn't want to. I've seen too many nurses that I think stay in a specialty or stay working past when they should, and I didn't
Mhm.
want to be somebody that didn't care about people.
Yeah.
So but it's finding that balance too, because I went the other way in a lot of ways and was over involved with my patients, had poor boundaries, and gave too much of myself. So
Yeah.
it's kind of finding that balance and that sweet spot there, I guess.
Right. And I want to say that I appreciate you thinking that way and doing that because, there's some nurses where it may feel like they don't care and that we're just a number. And the fact that you said that if you feel like you're not feeling it anymore, like I guess I know like the way you explain that,
Mhm.
you just know that you're going to be doing other things because at the end of the day, you want to make sure you care for that patient. You really have a connection with that patient. Where I do see in this industry that nurses at that point get burnt out.
Mhm.
And then they take it, well, I'm sure they don't mean to, of course, but it's
Right.
like they take it on like their next patients and stuff. And the next patient then has like trauma from not trusting doctors, me being one of them. And also, like, wait, actually, can we just jump in real quick with around COVID time?
Sure.
Like, how was that time for you?
Well, honestly, it wasn't too bad, because at the time I was working, I was also doing an on-call position then. And so it was a hassle, but it wasn't something where I was, constantly being surrounded by people who were dying from COVID or
Hmm.
dealing with that. And then I actually had a torn rotator cuff and I had surgery during that time as well. So then I was off for quite a while because I had to be able to be completely mobile with being back out. And that took several months. And I actually left my position shortly after that. For me, it wasn't awful, but I didn't get time off like some people did, but I also wasn't working, you know, around the clock like a lot of people in
Yeah,
nursing were
mostly
then.
AR,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. My cousin, I think she was working ER at that time. Not 100, I believe so. Right now, she works like in a doctor's office, so she's a lot happier there. But yeah, no, I can't even imagine being a nurse in ER around that time. Like that kind
Right.
of stress, imagine that burnout and stuff.
Absolutely.
I do want to talk about your mother.
Yes.
Your mother's passing, by the way. I'm so sorry
Thank
about your
you.
mother's passing. Just
Thank
want to
you.
say that first. So let's talk around that time that happened. Like
Mhm.
your feelings, like, just the whole story of that.
Yeah. So my mom, she was 61 when she passed, and she was a single mom. She had me when she was 18 and had worked, several minimum wage jobs and then worked her way on up while I was growing up. And then we actually went to nursing school together when I graduated from high school. And that was something that she had always wanted to be a nurse, but she was busy raising me instead. So we did that. But then she ended up with some health issues. She had multiple sclerosis and she had some other things going on and some mental health challenges too, really struggled with some anxiety and depression. She really was one of those people who put everybody else before herself, and she would have given anything to anybody except herself.
Mhm.
And so she had an aneurysm in the middle of her brain. And we knew that it was there. And she had contemplated having surgery. And, she was kind of on the fence about it because there was a risk of, brain injury, just because of where it was located. But the doctor felt pretty confident that he could, that he could take care of it. And she planned on doing it soon, but she was always finishing up with one more thing for somebody else. And so she had had some, because of her medications and because of other things that were going on, she had had some issues with her teeth. And so she finally went and got them pulled and got dentures. And honestly, it was an awful experience. The place that she went to ended up shutting down, and for good reason. But the morning that I found her, we were going to the dentist, and I was going to go with her and say, like, look, something different's got to be done. And I had talked to her that morning. I had gone out for a walk, and I called to make sure that she was awake because she was more of a night owl and stayed up like way too much. And she said, yeah, actually I was putting stuff in the attic and all that. And I'm like, okay. So I was getting ready, and she called me. I got a call from her, and when I answered it, she wasn't there. And so I said, hello, hello. And she didn't answer. And so I just hung up. And that wasn't abnormal because she always had to like clear off her messages on her phone. She wanted to, clear off her calls. I was like, Mom, you don't have to do that. But so she accidentally called me all the time for nothing. And well, when it was running a little late, she was supposed to be out because we live next door to each other. And I got mad, and I went in the house, and I like opened up the door, and I'm like, hey, come on. I didn't hear anything. And I went in there, and she was in the bathtub, and she had turned the water off. So she knew that something was going on, and she was agonal breathing and unresponsive. And I freaked out, and I called 911, and I couldn't remember anything. And she ended up passing. It was about 20 hours later, something like that. We went to the ER, and then they talked about, they said that she had that the aneurysm had ruptured, and they talked about flying her to Indianapolis. Um, and I was like, no, that's not, we talked enough. I know that's not what she wanted. But then of course I started second guessing myself, while I was waiting. I was like, well, wait, what, can it be okay? Can it be? And so I was able to talk with the doctor in Indianapolis. He looked at the scans and said, the bleed that she's got is incompatible with life. And I said, okay. And so then we just waited. So we got her up to the regular floor, and then we had some issues with the nurse there not wanting to get the pain medication adjusted. And, my mom had been in pain for years because of other things. And I was like, she's not going to be in pain now.
Mhm.
So we ended up getting hospice to come out and admit her at like, gosh, it was like 11 o'clock at night, maybe even midnight, and got a pain pump started on her. And she passed it. I think it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, but she was comfortable, and I was there, and, had a lot of guilt for my mom was a lot, and she was great, but she was a lot. And sometimes it was too much, and it was easier to not be as close to her as I once had been.
Mhm.
And I know that she was lonely. I, I have a strong faith, and we had had some conversations about that, and there were things that we had talked about, and I wasn't really sure where she stood with things. And that was my biggest concern, my biggest fear as I was there with her in the ER. And I did end up getting what I believe was confirmation that she was okay. I
Mhm.
kept hoping that she was going to, like, squeeze my hand or open my eyes or open her eyes or do something. And none of those things happened. I never got any kind of response from her, but I believe that she's in heaven. And I know that as many ways as I was not the best daughter. I know that she loved me. I know that she would have completely forgiven me, and, and that she's proud of what I'm doing now. And she was always proud of me. She was proud of me, but I was her only child. And really, I mean, me and my family were her only family. And so she needed us more than we needed her there at the end.
Yeah, I totally get that. Sounds kind of like a similar experience with my grandmother. Why do you, I want to go back to your feelings of guilt and feeling that you're not a good daughter. Why would you think that you're not a good daughter?
Because I knew how lonely she was. I knew, um, I could have made more time for her. I could have had better boundaries, because I feel like that was what it was, because my boundary, instead of just being able to say, hey, you know what, I want to spend this time with you, but like, I can't always do it in this way. Instead of being open about that and just really putting that out there, instead, I just avoided her part of the time. And that's one thing that I really do regret, is that if I would have said those things, if I would have had some of those difficult conversations with her, then
Hmm.
I think our relationship could have been better. At one point, we were best friends. We did a lot of things together. Then as she was a hoarder, and that got worse as well. And so she was always kind of busy. I called it doing the shit shuffle. As long as she would get, when she'd get these things organized, then she'd be able to do such and such. And it was just like this constant shuffle of stuff. And she would get, she'd get things from like Facebook or whatever. And she was all involved with these free groups, and helping to try to, okay, well, so and so needs this, so I'm going to do all this to try to get it set up for him. And she very much wanted to be helpful, and she was, to
Hmm.
so many people. But in some ways, that took away some of the time maybe that she had with us. And she took such horrible care of herself, in terms of, her sleep and her medication. She'd take her meds part of the time, and then she was on so many medications.
Hmm.
And then, of course, they had side effects that then, the doctor would throw another medication at her to treat the side effect. And then
I
she'd have,
hate that. They were trying to do
yes,
that to me too. Even today, when I went to a doctor today, I'm like, or my psychiatrist, I said, okay, just letting you know I'm feeling this side effect. Okay, I'll give you something. I'm like, no, stop. Like,
yes,
no, I'm 29 years old. I don't want to be like, how much more medication do you guys want me to take?
right,
Yeah, it's not my forte.
right. She would have these like wacky side effects that nobody else would have. She would have, some weird reaction to the med. And so, yeah, she didn't sleep well. Her diet was horrific, smoked like crazy, which, I mean, I did too for years. But
Same for my grandma.
yeah, and just so she took care of everyone but herself. And that is, that coupled with my own burnout is what has made me so passionate about people taking care of themselves, especially women, because we're bad at it.
It's also a society thing where it's the expectation of women, and it's just when you're like a girl or a woman, it's like automatically we're like wired that way,
Mhm.
which
Mhm.
is really sad. But I feel like we're getting better with that, with more conversations like this and more having boundaries. Like, I posted a boundaries episode recently, and that one like is number one right now, like so far in these last couple of weeks, and
Mhm.
that just shows that
Mhm.
people are focusing more on that, because and I've started doing that myself. Oh my god, what a life change.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
still working on it. I'm a recovering people pleaser. Because I
Yes.
mean that's what your mother was. She was a
You and me
people
both.
pleaser,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely.
And that's I was going to say, and that's the way that she felt good when she helped others.
Mhm. Mhm. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, I think that's true for so many of us. And but it's being able to do those things that yes, we have that giftedness to do. I mean, like, I've always been a caregiver, a helper of some sort. and she was too, but it's when we just cross that line a little bit of it being all about everybody else but us. And then, you can only do that for so long, and you can do it for quite a while,
Mhm.
but
When you
then
got
it ends up
energy.
coming back to get you. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. I'm surprised that has hit. I don't know if it's a male thing, but my dad's still a huge people pleaser. Like he's the guy that would give you his shirt like on his back. He's that kind
Mhm.
of like he's a huge people pleaser. Like I can't even explain how much of a people pleaser is. And now that you're mentioning, because you were saying how your mother passed away from an aneurysm, that is like one of
Mhm.
my biggest fears
Mhm.
because it does run in my family.
Mhm.
My grandfather passed away because of an aneurysm. I thought an aneurysm was kind of like a quick go, but I had no idea that it can last for that
Yes.
long.
Well, and so it was like that. So yes, sometimes it's just a very quick sudden death. With hers, it was quick in terms of the rupture, but she was tough. She was a strong woman. And the thing that one of the things that I've learned in being in hospice is that people die like they live in general. So somebody that is that kind of beats the odds, that they're supposed to do, step 1, 2, 3, 4, and instead they're doing like 7, 12, 3, 6. That's kind of my mom. So
Hmm.
yes, it was a massive bleed, and she just kept hanging in there, but she was completely unresponsive, and she wasn't, for most intents and purposes, she wasn't there, but yeah, she did continue to breathe, and her heart continued to beat for
I think she had a
several
nice
hours.
dream. She probably had a nice dream.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, at least like the way you're explaining like how her life was and being in pain, all the medical issues, it's does it feel a little, I guess, comforting that she's at peace and she's
absolutely.
right.
Yes. And, since then, like when COVID was going on, I joked, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm seriously like so glad that mom's not here for this, because she would have been one of those people who would have been like either trying to help everybody, or would have been like so either so over compliant or so non compliant. I mean, there would,
To one or the other.
yes, yes. And it would have been rough.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that she missed out on that.
When that happened, I was kind of thinking back at like my grandparents because none of them are currently alive right now, and just anyone that just passed away. I think of that too. Like they're probably like looking down, like, oh, glad I'm not there.
Exactly.
Glad I got to skip
Exactly.
that.
Yes.
It's so
Yes.
crazy how like we literally lived through history.
Right.
I can't even imagine
Right.
with
I
those
mean, something
textbooks.
huge. And now it's kind of,
It's still
it's here, but now it's like I don't
we're
know.
still
Things
we're
are kind of
still
back to normal-ish,
I guess in the
but
COVID
not.
side, but like
Right.
our country is
Right.
a that's a whole other story there.
Exactly.
I think we could talk about some self care there. You know what I do? I just mute everybody. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Seriously, I had a talk like that with another guest. We're talking about just taking care of our mental health when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to like the news and the media.
Yep.
So on social media, it was just all like constant at your face, and I'm just like
Yep.
mute, mute, mute. Like that's all I keep doing, and it helps. Oh my god!
Right.
Then I start watching cat videos.
Yep. I love cat videos.
There's
Yes.
like some,
Yes.
yeah,
I think those are a great form of self-care, and I agree. There's so much going on that I choose to not partake in
yes,
most of it, because I know what I need to do for myself mentally, and I know that I'm not going to do anything that's going to change the outcome of the things that everybody's talking about, but there
yes,
are things that I can do in my own life and in my own work to help people with themselves, so that regardless of what's going on outside of us, then we've got something to at least be inside and comfortable with ourselves.
yes. And you had a point there, and I'm glad you brought it up because I can talk so much about that. Like that's a huge self care thing right there that we started talking about. I'm like, because we're gonna talk, as we go on about different self care that's outside of bubble baths and a glass of wine. You know what
Mhm.
I mean? But
Yeah.
that one is so huge. And I mean, I've been noticing some people have been taking social media breaks, and I'm like, good for you. You
Mm-hmm.
delete those apps, you take that break, and more people have been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so needed. Like, even if it's not all the stuff, political stuff, like actually yesterday I saw some really sad videos, and the people who posted it, like, I know they're posting it just for advocacy and it helps them, it's cope, like that, definitely nothing to the poster, but it actually was medical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, one was this girl, she had a skiing accident, she just graduated college, had like a whole, she was going to be going into medical school, and she got into a skiing accident, and now she's paralyzed from the neck down,
Ugh.
which is so sad. And then I'm keep scrolling, and I see another girl. She had LASIK surgery on both her eyes, and it was
Mm-hmm.
fine until a year later. It just started damaging her eyes. And so I'm like, what is my algorithm right now?
Right.
I was like, no. Like, I think Instagram is on something right now. I'm just like, what made you think that this is something I want to see? I wasn't Googling stuff about being paralyzed. Like, I wasn't
Right.
liking them about being paralyzed. Like, no, keep showing me the cat videos.
Exactly.
There were like animated ones, and there's, I don't know if you see them, but there's like these animated ones where it's, oh my god, it's like uh they like sing these little, like, it goes, I'm not gonna sing the meow song, but and then there's like ones where like there's dogs and they're so cute and they're like cooking food and they're going in and gardening.
I
Oh,
haven't
well,
seen that.
they're animated, just to keep that in mind. They're
Okay.
animated. They're not like dogs, like literally in the garden. But I mean, maybe if you train them well enough.
Right. Maybe.
But
Maybe.
it's just like, it's so therapeutic because it's so simple. It's like these, they wake up, they go to the garden, they take the whole day just picking stuff and getting the meat, and then they go back to the kitchen. They have all their like stuff in the front. They're just like cooking their steak, cooking, getting some eggs, and they're just making food, and that's like all they're doing. And it's simple. And I'm just like, can I just live with you guys? Like, that sounds so nice. Like,
Right.
we're in a time of our life where stuff like that is luxury.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is self-care.
Absolutely.
That I want to talk about burnout here because I struggle with burnout. I know you struggle with burnout. This
Mm-hmm.
is why we're
Mm-hmm.
here today,
Right.
because it's, I think this is why we love that simple life, because we're so burnt out, we just want to go back. We want to be
Mm-hmm.
like, stop all the noises, stop all the social media, stop all the pollution, like
Mm.
stop all the cars that honk at you all the time. Like, just namaste. Namaste.
Right.
The sirens. Oh god, I get overstimulated way too much. But I am, as I mentioned, I'm 29 years old and I feel like I'm ready to retire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know if it's just like a generation. Like, I don't know if maybe just the world has changed so much over the years where now us like millennials are like, we're done. We can't do this
Mm-hmm.
anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you feel like that? Like, I just kind of want to go a little bit. Like, what are your thoughts on? Like, are we working ourselves to the grave? I'm assuming we are.
Right. Right. Well, yes, somewhat.
Sorry,
But
digging.
I think, good one. Yeah, I think that that is kind of the way it is, you know? I feel like we're all getting older a little quicker in some ways, but then there's, I mean, like you're saying I'm 29 and I'm thinking me too. Wait, no, no, I'm 49. But like I was just 29 like a couple of years
Yesterday,
ago. It
right?
happened so quick. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. It was just your
And I'm going to
29th
be 50
birthday.
this year and I'm super excited about it.
Okay, cool.
But because my 40s have been my best so far
I
and I'm
hear that. Kourtney
yes, yes.
Kardashian said that.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
she's like, your 40s are your best.
okay. Well, I didn't know that,
Hey,
but I do think I do think they are.
okay.
And I think my 50s are going to be even better. So I'm looking forward to that. And I just had my half birthday the other day, so now I'm
Ooh.
closer to 50 than 49. Um yes, I think that part of it is we're so connected all the time. There's not downtime unless
Mm.
we're super super intentional. And well, I know I'm not. I mean, I have some here and there, but
Somewhat. Oh, downtime?
downtime,
Mm, yeah.
yeah. And but we're just like constantly going. And I mean, I'm on call for my regular job overnight, like 4 nights a week. And then I work on my business stuff pretty much full time during the rest of the week.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got some other things that I do. There's not a lot of time where we're just like completely focused on, family or fun or whatever people used to do when they didn't when they
Back in
didn't
my
have.
day,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it's hard to remember the back in my day already. I think, what did we do when we didn't have,
I
like,
don't know.
when the phone was attached to the
I'm like
wall?
20 years
And
younger than you, so I don't know.
I
I
know,
just realized
but
I'm 20 years exactly. Well,
right,
yeah.
right. And, I think back to, because I've been a nurse for 30 years.
Mhm.
And I think back to the way that things were then, and it was so different. But at the same time, as I'm saying that, I remember when I was in nursing school and I was working pretty much full time while I was in school too. And I thought, I can't wait until I'm out of school. And then I'm just working, I'm going to have all this free time. And then it seems like I didn't have free time then either. And that was like in the very beginning of the first cell phones. Now, I never had like the big one, like in a bag that like carried and left it in your car.
In
Yeah.
the
Have you ever seen
bag.
one of those?
Wait. A cell.
Yes. It was like a car phone.
Oh, I heard of car phones, but
Yeah.
my
But it was
my
like a
mom never
big
had one.
thing, like in a bag. I didn't either, but my friend did. But like, I didn't know her then. She was a couple years older than me. Well, she's more than a couple years. Anyway, that doesn't matter. But yeah, I mean, that was even before like really cell phones were a thing. It's just, I don't know. I feel like life was busy then, but it keeps getting busier and it just feels like things are more.
Yeah, you know what's crazy too is I it, I left my 9 to 5 in 2022. And what my day-to-day looks like is I have two clients for social media management, so I do tasks here and there for them. I have my podcast. I mean, it doesn't really pay my bills. It pays it's a little bit, but not like I wouldn't say it pays my bills, but I work on it is a lot of work. I mean, I do 4 to 5 episodes a week and I post twice a week and like I keep up with the Instagram and just like a lot of things going on with that. So that takes up a chunk of my time.
And all of that takes up so much more time than
Yes.
like anybody realizes, because I haven't
Yes.
even done that much. Like when I was doing a podcast and guesting, now I just do my own short little one. And still it all takes so much more time than it seems like it would. Like ridiculously more than it seems like it
Yeah.
would.
And
Yes.
I used to do YouTube. So you gotta hear how my life used to be. You're gonna be like, girl, this is why you're burnt out for life. Okay, here we go. So okay. So I'm trying to think of first. I started a YouTube channel in 2016. I don't have that channel anymore. I actually just revamped it into just posting the mentally and badass videos on there. Um, so I just because I have like a 800 something subscribers, so I'd rather get a head start to get close to monetization. Okay. Anyway, not important. So if people don't realize that it's a lot of work just to film the video. People just think, oh, I just turn a camera and call it a day. Like, no, that's not how it works. There's some pre-planning, and then depending on what I'm recording, I used to do comedy sketches. So I have to like find someone to be in, and I have like scenes and planning out and things, and then it would take like at least 2 hours to edit like a 5 minute video. It would take that long, 2 hours. I mean, over
Wow.
time, I would learn how to be a little bit faster and have certain techniques. But, and then also, then you have to keep up with the socials part, responding with the marketing. It's not easy, right?
Mhm.
And so I started that in college and started my junior year of college. So I also, even on my senior, I took on a heavy load because I took off a semester to do the Disney college program. So I had to take like one or two extra classes like my last semester in order to, cause I didn't want to have like one missing class and then, so I took like what, 6 classes. I have no idea. It was a lot and an internship. So I had that, an internship and my YouTube channel posting once a week. Yeah, good times, right?
Mhm.
And then I will also work a little bit. Like I did substitute teaching. It was just like a couple times a week, just because I had to pay my car payment.
Mhm.
So like I needed just mostly for that.
Mhm.
And just have some pocket money at least. So I had that too. So can't even imagine that burnout there. Then I graduate, moved to Florida, and then I was working for Disney. And around that time, I was working in the parks, and they will work you in, especially the holiday season, to like could be 60-hour weeks and such. At one point, like I had a 14-hour shift, and then next day 13-hour shift. then 12-hour shift, then like 11-hour shift. By the time I hit the fourth shift, I was just walking like a zombie. I was like, I don't know where I am anymore. I'm completely like dissociated. And
Mhm.
and also it's like people think the job is easy too because all they see is just because like I worked at Test Track. I don't know if you're familiar with that ride.
Mm-mm.
So there's like 13 different positions around like the whole ride itself. And then we rotate like every 45 minutes, like the cast members. And so, oh my gosh, one time I was at like the seatbelt check area where obviously they check and pull on the yellow strap and all that fun stuff. And I'm only supposed to be there no more than 45 minutes. They switch us every 45 minutes so we're not burnt out.
Right, right.
But something,
Because you don't want somebody just like going through the motions with safety checks.
right, exactly. And then one day there was a technical issue because with the computer, because it's a computer that does it's all automated. So something happened where it skipped a rotation. So I had to stay there for 2 hours telling people to pull on the yellow strap. You know how traumatizing that is?
I bet by the end of that you were not the friendliest. It was not feeling like the happiest place on earth.
I mean, I still kept that smile on. Like, I don't know if I'm pretty good at it. I just
Huh?
like want to die in the inside. But you know what I
Yep.
did is that, oh my gosh. So basically they come up and then like, yeah, I have a yellow strap in my hand shows because there's different ways of them to I process what I'm trying to say. Because
Mhm.
you know, obviously if people are deaf or whatever. So visually they're already like as they're coming up, they're already seeing me do that. And then I'm saying, please pull on the yellow strap. And then half the time they're like, what? Please pull on like right there. Oh, the seatbelt? No, the yellow strap, like right there. They're like, you want me to pull it? And it's like, and the thing is that like, I can't have them take their time because if they do, it backs up
Mhm.
you know, we gotta be fast at these things,
Right.
right? Um, so I get frustrated, but I still gotta keep it together, right? And then
Yep.
once they're done, I have a good 3 to 5 seconds until the next car comes up and sees me. So I do like a little turnaround and I'm like, fuck everything. Hi guys, pull on the yellow strap. You should see my change of motion. It's like, ha ha ha. Fuck everybody. Hi guys.
Yep.
Oh my god. I even have some crazy like got like teenage boys like doing something inappropriate, if you know what I mean. I'll be like pulling the other and be like, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to say I don't want to say that I'll have to put this as like inappropriate podcast,
Exactly.
not that kind of
Right.
podcast. And I was like, God Lord. And then oh my god! And then there was this one time. Actually, no, this shouldn't be a bad one. It wasn't really the woman's fault. I actually felt really bad for her, but I had to. It took longer for her to put on her seatbelt. Well, no, she couldn't find the yellow strap, and it was a situation where I had to be very. Oh my gosh, she was so sweet too. She was a sweetie, and for a second, it was very kind of because she couldn't find the yellow strap, and it was kind of hard for me to tell her that she's sitting on it
Mhm.
and she couldn't reach for it. So what I had to do, I had to go in the car
Yep.
and I had to put my hand and look
Mhm.
for it.
Yep.
I did have to like pull out, I did have to click a certain button though, a button that pretty much notifies Tower that there's going to be a delay.
Uh-huh.
And you know what happened here is so when there's a delay, the tower has to put a recording that pretty much tells everybody it's delayed. But you know what the recording was? We were having a technical issue because I don't, and I literally listened to this recording, and I'm like, I felt so bad for this lady because I'm sure she heard it and sure she just knew what was happening.
Right,
But
right.
she was so sweet.
Aw.
She was such a sweetheart. But I felt bad, and yeah, I would never forget it. I think it took me like at least 5 minutes with her. But I hope she had a
Ugh.
good time. But yeah, no, oh my gosh, she was like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, I was like, but also I like how to pick my word. Cause I'm just like, okay, I know what I have to do, but I don't
Mhm.
want her to feel bad.
Right,
You know,
right.
like I don't
Yeah.
want her to feel upset. Like I don't want to ever come off like it's not her fault or anything like
Right.
that. Obviously, I
Yeah.
still have to go in there and be uncomfortable. Cause I can't just let her go just because of that
Right.
situation. I have to
Exactly.
like
Yes.
for safety, you know, I'll
Yeah.
automatically get termed. That's an
Yeah.
automatic, like you're
Yeah.
done
Mhm.
because that's yeah. Even though we do have like back to back. Like we actually do have like backup safety things that guests don't
Uh-huh.
know about, which is good to know if you go on Disney rides that there's actually backups
Mhm.
that we have. If like let's say she never pulled on the yellow strap, I
Mhm.
can if the actual on the side of the car, I can see if it's lit up properly. It's meaning that like if one part's not lit up, it means that like it's not fully in or it's just the car is not working properly. So but
Okay.
guests don't know like it's like on a certain side and
Huh?
but then so that's so basically the first one is visually to make sure the guest knows like pull on the strap for you. Second, I
Mhm.
check that, make sure they all pull, visualize that, and then I look at those lights that I was referring to make sure that that's all good. So I look at two things. And then let's say all
Mhm.
fails, all human thing fails. Even when I
Mhm.
click the button, let's say if I fail at everything, it still won't.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah, so I can fail completely at everything and
Mhm.
they still won't die. So it's
Well,
really
that's
good that they
good.
have all that backup. So, so if anyone listening to this, so you can feel extra safe when you go to Disney,
Yes.
that they have so much back end. So I realize I'm going on a complete tangent on this, but
That's all
where are
right.
we going? Oh, burnout.
Well, you know what? So, because I did, and I actually have kept this thought, so I'm going to
Okay,
interject it here for a
go for
second.
it.
So, you said, that you did like this, like 14 hours and then 13 hours and 12 and 11, when you were
Mm-hmm.
like that. And yes, so there's these safety things that Disney has in place for all of that. But there are so many people in healthcare that are working shifts like that
Yes.
regularly. And, there's not all of those kind of things. And when they get very burnout and just exhausted, it's and I don't know the stats on this because I'm not good with stats, but basically, when you go without sleep, it's like being drunk. And so
Yes.
you have people that are, doctors and nurses who are essentially drunk taking care of you
That's scary.
when you're in need. It is. And then what are you going to do? Because, well, there's a shortage. Why? Because people are burned out because of working like that. So it's this horrible vicious cycle.
So what can we do better? Like not just, I mean, because when it comes to the shifts, these nurses
Hmm.
don't really have much control over that, right?
Right.
So, since they don't have control, what can they control in their own lives that can help
Hmm.
them?
Yeah. And so that's what I like to focus on, because there are so many things that are outside of our control, in healthcare, and honestly just in life. There's
Yeah.
so many things that we can't do much about, regardless of where we're working or what things look like. And so what I really advocate for is to look inside yourself, take time to figure out, like, what is it that I need?
Hmm.
And we can get so busy taking care of everybody else and just doing the next thing, that we don't take time to really think about, okay, you know what? Like, how am I feeling? How am I doing right now?
Hmm.
And being able to, like, really take a look at that and then be honest with ourselves about it, instead of, oh, I'm fine, or, oh, well, no better than, no worse than everybody else is. Thinking about what it is that's missing, what it is that we enjoy doing. I really am a huge fan of personalizing our self-care. And like you talked about, a bubble bath and a glass of wine, hey, that's great. I'm all for that if that's something that you enjoy. But there's so much more to it than that. And it doesn't have to be anything that takes a lot of time either. Because
Hmm.
that's one of the things, of course, that's why I wrote the book Self Care Isn't Selfish, because that's one of the things that I hear a lot. And then people also say, well, I don't have time for self care, or I wouldn't even know where to start. And so those are kind of the three big ones that I hear the most. And, so I think challenging that not only is self care not selfish, but it's essential if we want to be able to continue to care for others and live our
Hmm.
best lives. And taking it a step further, as somebody who's lost her mom as a result of, at least I would say in large part due to a lack of self-care, I feel like not taking care of yourself can be kind of selfish. If you're somebody that really, it's easy to get a lot of self-satisfaction and validation from caring for others,
Hmm.
because it does make us feel good. I mean, we're wired to, helping other people helps us too. It helps us feel good, and that's great. But we can become so dependent on that feeling of encouragement and, hearing people tell us how great we are and how helpful we are, that it can become kind of its own kind of drug that, I mean, I was there myself, and that's, I'm not saying that it's awful people that do that. I feel like I was a pretty good person. I was doing good things,
Yeah.
but I very much I really liked that. I enjoyed the work I was doing, but at the same time, it really fed something deeper in me too.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to kind of balance that out and figure out what is it that I'm missing? What work do I need to do on myself? And how can I meet some of those needs? And some of that may be doing very simple things like stopping and taking a few deep breaths. So much of the time we're just doing, this kind of thing, where we're
Mm-hmm.
breathing from our chest, and really when we slow down and we take deeper breaths, especially from our belly, then our nervous system slows down. We get out of that fight or flight mode and we're able to think more clearly. We're not just reacting to everything. We're able
Mm-hmm.
to plan and to execute better than when we're just constantly reacting. Sleep is something else that's huge. And that was one of my mom's things too. I don't have time to sleep. Well, like you're going to eventually have time to
Yeah, you're gonna like
to sleep.
fall. Yeah,
Yes,
your body would
yes.
literally fall. Like it would force you
Absolutely.
and you'll pass out.
Right. And our bodies give us warning signs that we ignore. When we have stomach issues or headaches all the time, I mean, those kind of things are our body's way of letting us know, hey, something's not quite right here. You need to
Mm-hmm.
do something different. And eventually, when we don't pay attention to those, then it kind of keeps getting louder and louder. And usually we'll end up, sick with sometimes, if you overwork yourself, you end up with a cold and you're kind of sidelined for a few days. And then sometimes it's something much more serious and long term because we're not made to just run nonstop 24.
Yeah. Today I actually went to the neurologist because I kept having migraines.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to take
Mm-hmm.
care of myself here.
Good job. Good job. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I get that. I have migraines. I go and see a neurology MP, and I don't know about you, but when, and mine do kind of cycle. And I think some of that is hormonal, and
True. I didn't
that's
think
what
about
she thinks too. But also it's part of it for me is when my sleep has been disrupted a little too long, or when I'm not practicing what I preach. And it happens so subtly. I don't
Mhm.
really realize it usually until about day 2 of having a headache, and I'm like, why do I keep having these Well, let's see. So I haven't been doing this. I haven't been doing, and my days have
Mhm.
been crazy, busy, booked. And then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's probably why. And it's so easy to get back on that hamster wheel. But with some practice, with some good habits and tips and tricks in your tool belt, then it's easier to get off of it again too. To recognize it much more quickly
Mhm.
when you start heading down that slippery slope again, and then turning it back around. That's I mean, I'm definitely a work in progress. I wish I could say I
Mhm.
had it all figured out, but I don't. But there's a lot of things that I do know, and there's a lot of things that I know just have to be done over and over again. And a lot of it's not, anything super complicated or super time consuming. It's simple practices that matter to you. The things that de-stress me might be stressful to you, but
Mhm.
it's really like figuring out. And that's what I do with my programs is help people work through, like, what is it that matters most to you? What de-stresses you? What excites you? What kind of things do you love? What do you hate? What do and so putting together some simple things so that in the moment, in a time when you are in a really stressful time, you don't have to be figuring everything out right then from scratch.
Okay. Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I had a thought in my mind. The people that come to my mind like right away when it comes to not having the time are new mothers.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
I guess for a single mother with a toddler
Mhm.
and has to work two jobs, what would you say
Uh-huh.
to that person? What
Well,
advice would
that's
you give?
a
'Cause that's a hard one.
Absolutely, it
Yeah.
is. It is. And there's a lot of people who are doing that kind of on the other end too, where they're taking care, they're working full time and then they're taking care of aging parents. And
Yes.
so, yes, in those situations, first of all, I'm not, like my life in terms of those situations, my life is much easier than that. But I've also, worked with people at both sides of that too. And I've been there with both sides of that. And again, the basis of it is still the same in terms of figuring out like what is it that makes you feel better quick. And,
Mhm.
sometimes it might be, if a glass of wine is your go-to, you probably can't do that all the time,
I was gonna
especially
say,
if
I
you're,
think that's
taking
most
care of other
women
people.
have that glass. Oh, the kids are asleep. Vodka, maybe not.
Right.
Depending on the day, either wine or vodka. I don't do that.
Right, right. But it's knowing those little things. So maybe it's sitting down and, spending 3 minutes having a cup of tea.
Hmm.
Maybe it's getting on the phone or going for a walk with a friend, and just being able to have some sort of adult conversation, and having the kids there with you. I mean, because maybe having a babysitter, having somebody else watch the kids for a little bit, maybe that's not much of an option.
Hmm.
And so figuring out ways to kind of incorporate them in with that, and take the time to enjoy some of the things that maybe feel kind of like chores. And I get that. I mean, we've got kids, they're grown now, and now we've got grandkids, but it's a challenge to be able to do everything. Kids are just slower. I mean, they
Hmm.
force us to slow down
True.
when it comes to things. But that can be good too if you look at it a little differently. And okay, so what is something fun that we could do that'll help me to slow down, that'll help me to spend time with the kids. And maybe it's something like when my kids were young, and I didn't do a lot of like fun, really creative, things, but something that I did, and partly it was because, well, you'll understand, is I would just like pour water on the ground, water with a little bit of vinegar, and on the like in our kitchen. And because we had tile floor, and I'd throw towels on the floor, and the kids would just like love just like, flopping all around and getting these towels to kind of clean the floor. And so I was getting the floor mopped. The kids were having fun. And it was a fun way to do things, instead of being like, well, I can't do that now because I got to mop the floor. Instead, we made it something that was kind of fun and
Hmm.
interactive for them, and they didn't realize that it was, doing me a favor too. It just
Yeah.
seemed like fun. So, trying to do things where it can get them involved. And then if there are ways to maybe be able to get a little bit of time away, if there's, friends or family where you can kind of swap some childcare, maybe, then wonderful. Again, you got to do what you're comfortable with, because,
Hmm.
well, I mean, we know how the world is. And so you can't just be leaving your kids with anybody, of course, but trying to prioritize your own needs as well. And that does look different when it comes to different stages of kids' lives. Your needs will have to take a back seat when you have little ones at home, but there are still ways to fit in things like, making sure that you're eating decent meals and you're getting some exercise. And even if that's, doing things with the kids, you're going for walks or going to the park or whatever, but being able to fit in those really basic kind of things into your life, and know that it will get better at some point. It will get easier. And then there's, of course, things that there's new challenges with parenthood for sure through each
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah. I'm not there yet, parenthood, but I'm learning as I had like a little practice with like my friend's kids once. Like I was taking care of them when she was at work, and I was very burnt out. But I did something as similar what you're saying. Like I was trying to work out because like that's I wanted to be part of my day.
Hmm.
And I was like, "Oh, why don't I just like put on some like dancing video and I can dance with like the toddler?" Something
Right.
like that. It's fun. And like doing
Right.
some jumping jacks with her. And so that's what we did.
Exactly.
So I guess I incorporated it without not even realizing it.
Hmm.
But yeah, no,
Hmm.
that's really good advice. So I really hope that people who listen to that will take that advice and such. Let's talk about your book. Self care isn't selfish. What can people learn from it? What can they expect? Where can they find it? Tell me everything.
All right. Well, it's short. It is a quick and easy read, because people that need it are not people who are going to spend a bunch of time
That
reading
totally makes sense.
reading a book about
That
it.
was very
And,
thoughtful.
well, it's also, so yes, it sounds very thoughtful, and it was for that reason, but also because, well, I'm a little ADD myself. So the thought of sitting down and writing like 300 pages, that was not going to happen. So it is a decent size font, and it is 122 pages, but it has, it has some of my story and some background info in it, but really a lot of it is kind of why it's so important
Mm-hmm.
to take care of ourselves, and then just a lot of simple easy practices to incorporate into your days, and kind of picking and choosing and putting together a plan in advance so that you're not waiting until life is super stressful and then going, okay, now I don't even know what to do. So
Mm-hmm.
you kind of have your go-tos of, hey, I know that I can do these 3 or 4 things and they really seem to help me. And so that's what I'm going to do when I'm feeling super stressed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of how that came to be. And so it is available on Amazon in Kindle version and paperback and large print hardcover and an audiobook. So if my voice doesn't annoy you too much, then it's me reading it. So, and also all of your readers can go and get a free readers, all of your listeners. Maybe they're reading the notes. All of your listeners can go and get a free digital copy on my website too.
Nice. Yes, I'm going to put all of that information in the description so they can check you out.
Awesome.
But Jenny, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day, giving
Well,
me
thank
some of your
you.
energy,
It's
because your
been
energy
fun.
is valuable.
That's true, and it is for all of us. So I appreciate you, and it's been wonderful.